Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
Sometimes I feel like when everything's going to shit, it's actually going pretty well. We owned ASRX, which had two divisions. We had the ASRX and then affiliates ASRX, which we did screen printing for several thousand affiliates by. And then one day he just comes up to me and he's like, guess what? And I was like, what? And he goes, you just got your brand back. And the committed concept was a lot to do with all the kind of revolt against CrossFit and a lot of de-affiliation that happened. Real kind of lifeblood and sort of why ASRX existed was just being part of the culture, representing the community, representing the individual CrossFitter, not the CrossFit athlete, a brand of the people. And so that's kind of what we're trying to revitalize a little bit.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 87 with Marcus Dedina from ASRX. You ready, Prince?
You kidding me, Richie Rich? We just had the Badger on, and ASRX is back in business, baby.
Yo, if you're an OG CrossFitter, I mean like OG, not like I got into it in 2011, 2012. I mean, you got into it at the beginning. You know my man Marcus. He's been at it since day one almost. He's been involved with affiliates. He's had multiple different brands within the CrossFit community. Some would even argue he may have had one of, if not the first, brands specifically focused in the CrossFit industry. We're stoked to have him on again, chat about how things have been going down in California, what he's been up to, and talking about the new launch of ASRX.
Yeah, I always appreciate Marcus's perspective and some of the history behind CrossFit and the knowledge he's bringing to the table. So anytime we can sit down with Marcus and pick his brain, it's going to be a good one. And ASRX, the first brand that we were hip to in the CrossFit community, you moved out to Encinitas and worked with those guys, is back in business. So to get the details on what's going on with ASRX, you're going to want to listen to this one.
Yeah, the Badger is the man. He's taught me a lot back in the day, helped me get my first pistol. It taught me some, still to this day, Coach Q Coach. That was one of those nuggets that he gave me that I still use to this day. And yeah, like we've said all along, the podcast, the power of the podcast, it connects, it brings together. And lately, we've been having a lot of our friends on, been able to connect here as we're going into the holiday season. And it's just great to chat with Marcus. Love the dude. Love everything he's about. He's a solid citizen. Even though he says he's from Chicago, he's really from Indiana. We still love you, Marcus. Yo,
and if you enjoy this podcast, make sure you go on ASRX, get some of their new committed gear that they got out there. And as always, rate, review, subscribe, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Airey Bros Radio.
and when you're done listening to this episode, as always, check out the show notes, click on the links, give our guests some love, give our sponsors some love. Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512. Trying to cancel you though.
I know, yeah, that's true. I think I've already been canceled. I'm not even sure.
Oh shit. Let's get into
Uh,
that too.
so, the way I look at it in some ways, like, is if a random person came into my office and they had a cold, like if they were one of my employees, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, go home. I don't want to get sick. And I feel like I look at it like anyone walking around could be that person, you know? So I'm not really afraid of dying. I don't think that, I mean, from an existential standpoint, I'm afraid of dying, but not from COVID. And, but I don't like the idea of, for one, of getting sick from a personal perspective, but I also don't like the idea of necessarily, like, if I did happen to have it and maybe somebody I know that was older got it and it was like somehow linked back to me, I'd feel pretty guilty. With that said, I mean, it's been a year. You know what I mean? I took it pretty seriously in the beginning, and then, I mean, I live in an apartment that has a pool, and there was one point where I was sitting out there. There's like 60 people sitting outside, hanging out by the pool, and I'm drinking White Claws, like handing them to people, So I mean, it was like, it'd be a hypocrite if I said I was taking it so seriously that I've taken every precaution. But the last like 6 weeks, I'd say 4 weeks, I've probably taken it a lot more seriously. I'm just ready
Again.
for it to be over.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've said this from the beginning, is that you just can't shut down the economy and take people's livelihoods away. And for you as a business owner, seems like at least where we're from in New Jersey with Ian Smith, there's a lot going on where they're pushing hard against that. We've seen some other gyms in California where they have the big banners outside that say fitness isn't a crime. By all means, let's be precautious and let's take care of things and do things right. But to come in and just say you're done, like figure it out, like pay your employees, do what you got to do, and then to see like these corporations getting millions of trillions of dollars in bailouts while we're here, like I'm literally like 5 out of 7 days a week I eat once a day, and that's not because I'm like a crazy fitness guru and is I'm trying to save money here so that when shit really does go sideways, I'm not eating the toilet paper that all the people stockpiled fucking 8 months ago.
Yeah, I think that from the gym owner's perspective, in a weird way, like, I mean, nobody probably has this perspective except me, but sometimes I feel like when everything's going to shit, it's actually going pretty well. And I think that if you're the governor of California, which I know a lot of people don't like him, and you find out a bunch of people dying, they're coming out of nowhere and they're dying really fast, I would probably have the same perspective where I'd go, okay, where's most people going to hang out in a group? Let's just shut that down, because we got to make sure nobody's dying because there's a bunch of people dying, and that's my biggest concern, which is what he did. On the flip side, all the small business owners that know that they're probably not very high at risk, like the CrossFit gym owners, are like, nah, man, fuck off. I'm not going to shut down. And they didn't, and nobody's messed with them. So in a way, I think the restaurant industry probably got the biggest hit because they're so public and they were getting cited a lot. That it didn't work out as well, but for the vast majority of the gym owners I know, we're still running. We're still open. We take more precaution, but overall, I the first lockdown when everybody didn't know what the hell was going to happen, that's where we took our biggest hit as far as membership went. But since then, actually, November was our biggest month, our third biggest month of the year, because so many people got sick of it that they came back, or we got new people. So I think it's worked out in some ways. I think that from what I've tried to do is just lay low. Like, I'm not trying to have any sort of big revolt, but I totally get that. Like, don't tell me what to do. This is my business, this is my country, and people have the right to take a risk. I had an idea where it's just, if you want to be, you guys are gonna like this one. If you want to just do whatever you want, you can do it, but you have to sign a waiver that says you're not allowed to go to the hospital if you get sick.
Oh man, give me the waiver, dog.
Where is it?
Give me the waiver.
Can you fax that over now?
if you're ready to just like throw caution to the wind, you're like, yeah, I want to go to the gym. It's fine. Sign the waiver. You don't go to the hospital. All the people that want to take the risk have the ability to take the risk. If you're a restaurant owner, you can open up. You just sign the waiver. And everybody that wants to stay inside and be able to go to the hospital and not get sick, they have to abide by certain rules,
for me, Marcus, it's not even throwing caution to the wind. I'm willing to bank on my immune system in the past 32 years, 33 years of training and eating well and taking care of myself. Like, to me, you're closing down gyms, but the McDonald's around the corner is packed every day.
Oh yeah, that's
Like, to me, there's the disconnect. Like, if it's really about my health, fast food tax, like alcohol tax, tobacco
Cigarettes.
tax, like
yeah,
where's that
and
at?
that's another story. That's another story altogether. I think that from a like a right now perspective, there's not like 20 people hanging out in McDonald's together though. And the people that are already fit are fit. They're probably not like no one's going to go to a gym right now and get fit and avoid COVID if they just started. Right. So if they go into a gym and there's 30 people in there and they get COVID and they die, it's the gym's fault. If they go to McDonald's, it's because they're fat. And then they go to the gym and then they die because they got COVID at the gym. It's still kind of the gym's fault. And so, there's mitigating risk as far as being a business owner, keeping it open. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that it would kill me. Honestly, the thing that scares me the most is losing my sense of smell. If I lost my sense of smell for 6 months, like the only thing I love to do is drink wine and eat food. And if I could smell shit, I'd be so pissed. But yeah, I think it's a mess. I think maybe the best thing that could come out of this is understanding that as far as viruses go, this one's fairly mild, and we did not have a good plan as a country for this. So I think that hopefully now we'll realize like we got to have something set up besides like, oh shit, what do we do now that a bunch of people are getting sick? Let's just shut everything down, which was this like retroactive knee-jerk reaction that they had. And so nothing went well. I feel like it still isn't, but hopefully, a few months it'll be gone, but we'll see.
How long have you, I mean, we had that initial shutdown or whatever where everyone was pretty much like, yeah, we're on board. Let's do our part. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and saw a lot of gyms that were doing like Zoom online stuff where, meeting with their members. How long did you guys do that before you were back up and running, having people coming in for classes?
That's a good question. It was several months. It got to a point where I forget, but it was a lot. It was a long time. It got to the point where I hated Zoom burpees, All right. Who loves mountain climbers, Nobody. So, but I can tell you that what happened when it first came out, we were very aggressive as far as shutting down because we didn't know what was going to happen, which was supposed to be 2 weeks, right? We're like, okay, everyone sounds like they're going to be shutting down. Let's shut down and see what happens. And then, 3-4 months later, we're still shut down. So I went and I installed 24-hour cameras, 24-hour access in the gym, and knowing that there's going to be this like kind of peaks and valleys with this situation. And then the big thing that kind of triggered me was when we were doing these Zoom classes for the gym, I would be on Zoom and like, it'd be like, Jimmy and Rich and 5 of your friends are all in the garage watching, and you're all working out together. And I'm like, well, what the hell? I'm like, there's no difference between you guys all getting together and working out and then coming to the gym and working out, except that we probably clean the gym more than you clean your garage floor,
Right.
And so some of my members might disagree with me on that, but we do our best. And so, I kind of came to the realization, I'm like, well, if people are going to do this anyways, right, and we're not, and they know the risks, then we're going to just allow them to go into the gym whenever they want, have full access to the gym. And then from there, we sort of opened up more and more, had classes. Then we got shut down again a few weeks ago. And then some judge just now in San Diego yesterday, last night was like, I'm not enforcing this in San Diego. So all the restaurants and gyms are opening back up, apparently. That's the word on the street. So
Yeah, because if a couple weeks back, it was like strip clubs were allowed to be open
yeah.
in San Diego.
And then I think one of the Padres, I think it was a Padre. Did you guys see that? He went to the strip club and he got COVID and he sued the strip club.
Oh my God.
That's America right there.
Jeez.
Oh man, so good. But
that kind of stuff makes you lose hope in humanity.
Yeah, it's hard. It's definitely a long time ago. One of my buddies and I got in an argument, and he said it's a lot easier to write a sad song than a happy song. And I was like, no way, man. There's so many happy songs. And then like playing guitar, I'm always like thinking of like not like I'm depressed or anything, but you're just like easier to write stuff that you go through, like trials and tribulations. And I think it's hard to stay positive, a lot harder to stay positive on things like this than it is to go down either side of the one of the two rabbit holes of like, why aren't you wearing a mask? And like, because masks are bullshit, you know? And it's kind of just like, I don't know, man, just let's get through this the best we can and like live in that sort of gray area of knowing we're not going to be perfect, but also knowing like we're not going to be stupid either.
Yeah, and to your point, like obviously we're not on team mask. That said, we're not partying. I haven't left the state since all this has started. The most traveling I've been is going to a mountain to get some exercise. You know, it's definitely pretty much been quarantined before there was a quarantine. That's just how I kind of socialize and what have you. That said, what is the community at Dynamis? Are they split? Like some team mass, some like let's go and let's just train. What's that atmosphere like?
No, I think that they all kind of have a similar attitude as I do, where it's just like, hey, let's be cautious, but let's also live our lives and hope no one gets sick. You know, I think we have a few members, a few staff members that probably take it a little looser than I do, you know, but then we also have some that take it a little bit more serious, but we all kind of collectively are probably on the same page. I just think it's more like nobody really knows exactly the right thing to do, but we take caution when we go and work out, and we feel better when we work out, and we work out in a group and no one's gotten sick, and we wear masks most of the time, unless it's like a really gnarly workout, and then we pull them down and try not to touch things and go home and wash our hands. And, you know.
Are you guys still in the same space?
Yeah, we signed another 3-year lease the month before we shut down.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So we're in it. Yeah, we're there. A little behind on rent right now, but we're starting to catch back up.
And you guys expanded too, yeah?
Yeah, so I had this idea in my head of what I wanted the gym to look like the entire time. We haven't expanded outside our gym, but the gym itself. And I kept wanting to remodel it, but then we were like getting closer to the end of the lease. And so we decided, are we going to stay, or are we going to just give it up and like, you know, do other things that we do? Because we do a lot of other stuff, me and my business partners. We decided to keep it. So the day that I saw the lease was signed, I took a ladder and I just started ripping the drop ceiling out of half of the building. And it took me 2 months and like $4,000 worth of trash removal to finish the project I'd started. Yeah, it was way overboard. I had to build walls and I tore out all the ceiling. I had to redo the fire extinguishers. I mean, it was just absolute chaos. So now, that was actually, we actually signed the lease probably 3 or 4 months, I think, before closing. We finished the remodel the month before closing down. So we had this brand new lease, brand new, like completely redone gym. And then we shut it down. So I had I still have a 1995 Ford Bronco that looks like the O.J. Simpson Bronco. I pulled it into the gym, gutted it. The whole gym was full of my Bronco parts for 2 months, and all I did was work on it. So,
is it up and running?
Hell yeah, at least.
Always the visionary, Marcus.
My wife hates it. See it there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Got the soft top.
Sick.
I like it. So what's life now like being in a house or apartment opposed to the mini house you had, or the what was it? Was it a camper?
It was a tiny house. Well, I lived in a camper too, which was horrible. I mean, it's all relative, but
wasn't the loft.
Yeah. It was probably pretty equal, except I had my own privacy in the camper. The tiny house, the tiny house was great as far as the experience. We made money selling it. We saved money having it. We were able to afford living by the beach at the time because it was fairly affordable there. But it's not a sustainable way to live for very long, especially when there's 2 of you and a large dog. There he is licking his nuts right there.
Attaboy.
There you
Get
go.
it, dog.
Wish I could do the same thing. I would be happy staying at home all the time.
So yeah, it was very well worth it. I would not do it again. But in living in a very nice apartment comparative to what I'm used to living in, at least, I've always hated apartments, and my wife's like, let's move into a really nice apartment. I was like, apartments suck. And then she's like, have you ever lived in a nice apartment? And I was like, no, not really. And so we found this one, and it's nice. There's a pool and all kinds of stuff I don't use, but it's nice. I could cook without having to like bump into the couch, and I have a bedroom that's separate from my kitchen, so there's some definite perks.
You got a garage too.
And a garage, yeah.
That's
I
huge.
Got some tools. I just re-gripped all my golf clubs the other day. It's a good time.
You golfing now?
Just started, yeah. I'm terrible. Drinking beers and golfing's like the best thing ever.
Do you play? Do you get better as the series goes on, or is it a steady decline as the alcohol absorption kicks in?
I seem to work in sort of like a pyramid shape. Right around hole 4, I'm just golden, and then it goes pretty bad after that. I only play 9 holes ever.
Okay.
But I usually drink 2 pretty big IPAs during those 9 holes. So by the end, I'm stumbling a little bit.
Right.
And I don't drive home.
Good.
The wife.
What's your go-to IPA?
I don't have. So I was always kind of like the anti-IPA guy, and then once my wife also, she's like, have you ever had what's it called? Hazy IPA? And I was like, I don't really even drink beer. And she gave me one, or got one like from the store or whatever. We were sitting by the pool, and I was like, this thing's fucking delicious. And so ever since then, I'll just like any hazy IPA I see at the store when I'm going to drink, I just grab whatever I see. And every one of them's been delicious. The only one that I got that said hazy IPA, but it wasn't hazy at all. It was just like regular beer.
The other thing to look for too, because Jimmy and I, we do a beer podcast as well, is
nice.
New England IPA.
I don't drink though.
Really?
He just works the soundboard, so we don't, because it's Jimmy and I and our 2 cousins, and so we get pretty shitty. And Jimmy just is in charge with being sober and working the soundboard and making sure we stay on track, because we do anywhere from 3 to 4 beer reviews throughout the 2 hours, and then we also have it's almost like a book club for men, but we don't read books. We watch documentaries or podcasts, or right now we're on like an 80s movie kick, so we've been doing that. We did 4 episodes with all holiday movies. But
man, that's awesome.
Point to that story was, if you like hazy IPAs, keep your eyes peeled for New England IPAs.
Okay.
Yeah, New England IPAs tend to be on the juicier and hazier side.
Okay.
So yeah, that's just another thing to look out for if you're into those hazy, juicy ones. You like that kind of orange juice effect. New England style IPAs are the ones that tend to be the juiciest.
All right, I'll go tonight. That'll be my Friday treat.
I'm trying to think. There's actually it's in San Diego. It's called Milk Keller Brewing.
Okay,
it's like it was originally founded by 2 brothers, and then they kind of had a riff like the Adidas Puma guys, the brothers, and so they split. And then this Milk Keller Brewing is they're based in San Diego. I don't know exactly where in San Diego, but I've gotten some of their beers, and some of my like uber nerd beer friends say that it's like a really high quality brewery.
Probably closed. Son of a bitch.
I've been getting beers from them. We do this. There's another thing called Tavor, and basically it's like beers from all over the country, stuff that you might not be able to get in your area. And then you can just scroll through and you can order beers, and then they'll just ship a box of, you can do single cans, you can get up to, depending on the beer, sometimes you can get like a 6-pack or a 12-pack of a particular style. And then you can set your shipping date or whatever, and usually you'll get like a case of beer or just different IPAs and stouts from around the country.
That's great. It's amazing. You can just get alcohol shipped. Soon it's going to just be cannabis shipped, just whatever you want.
Hopefully that's what we're hoping for. The funny thing is like, technically, like if I were to ship you beers, I would be considered bootlegging, and that's like a federal offense, especially if you send it through the mail. But somehow these companies have, lobbyists or whatever, have gotten a workaround where they're able to ship beers around the country. So can't complain.
Cool.
You got a big announcement, I heard.
ASRX?
Yes.
Yeah. We Did I tell you guys the story about this the last time we talked, or how it
Last
all?
time we got into it a little bit, and it was kind of in the works as to potentially revitalizing the brand and starting it back up. And then Jimmy had said that our friend Adrian Bosman is now got some ties with y'all. So we're big fans of Boz, and we obviously love you. So let's get into it.
Boz is amazing.
He's the
Yeah.
best.
So essentially, what happened? A little backstory is, Brian and Alex and I, amongst others, but we were the big three. We owned ASRX, which had two divisions. We had the ASRX and then affiliates ASRX, which we did screen printing for several thousand affiliates. Um, and then we got into just some financial issues. It was just hard to keep the business open with or running the ASRX side with just the three of us. And there's a lot of competition coming in, and we got an offer to be bought out from this company in Orange County, and so they bought us out, just the ASRX brand division, and then the other side of the company kept the affiliates as prescribed division. And then I worked for them for a little while. It just wasn't a good cultural fit. They weren't bad people. Actually, they were actually pretty nice, but they were just suit and tie types, and didn't understand the culture at all. And so they eventually let me go, and then they shut down ASRX. And so, we sat and kind of thought about it, and I thought about it a lot. I was like, would I want to get back into it? And then that's when I came up with the idea for Fully Amped. I started cranking on Fully Amped, and I got a business partner that's also my investor. He's a good friend of mine, and he's like, "What's going on with that ASRX brand, man?" He's like, "That's like what you're known for." And I was like, "Well, they have it. They want a ton of money for it, and I just don't think that it's worth it." And so my business partner JT was like, "Well, why don't you connect me with them?" So I connected him, and nothing happened. It's probably, several months had went by. And then one day he just comes up to me and he's like, "Guess what?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You just got your brand back." And he's like, "I bought it back." And I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "It's ours." And so that started, that was a few years ago. That was probably 2 years ago. It was right when we were kind of getting it fully up and running. And I was really excited, but I also was apprehensive because I wasn't sure, you know, where we stood as a brand, where I stood as far as being the person to be the leader of the brand, and kind of even where the community in a whole was. It really gone towards that sort of noble, kind of very clean aesthetic, really kind of everything we weren't was very much what CrossFit had become. Not from like who we were as people, but more the style. And so it just didn't seem like it was a good time for it to be revitalized. And so we just sat on it. And of course JT bought it, and he was like, "Hey, when are we going to relaunch this thing?" I kind of put some money into this. And uh and so when this sort of big change happened with COVID and CrossFit and just everything, it really felt like a good time to start to bring back some of the old school culture. And so, my plan was essentially to become what we were, but better, what we originally were. Um, Focus mainly on the things that, me and the partnership, and even getting some insight from Brian and Alex, uh, what we'd want to do, not what we would need to do to like make ends meet, which is kind of what Life as RX and ASRX became near the end. It wasn't, "Hey, what do we like to make?" It was like, "What are people going to buy?" And that was never really fun. The fun part was just coming up with cool stuff. And so the idea now is to just make whatever I want. Really, we're working on a new short that is going to be a step up from the last short we did, which is still my personal favorite, albeit probably somewhat biased. Um, and the committed concept was a lot to do with all the kind of revolt against CrossFit and a lot of de-affiliation that happened, which nothing, no offense to those people. I think some of them had good reason, and maybe we're probably planning on doing that before anything even happened. But the real kind of lifeblood and sort of why ASRX existed was just being part of the culture, representing the community, representing the individual CrossFitter, not the CrossFit athlete, not the famous, like most attractive female. It was or male. It was just more like you know, a brand of the people, and so that's kind of what we're trying to revitalize a little bit.
For us, by us.
For us, by us, yeah.
So my question is, going into before COVID, was the reboot like ready to go, or everything happened and it was like, oh, this is kind of our window right now?
I was, it's in my head. It's been going on for the whole last 2 years, but I'm not much of a planner. You know, I try to be. So I build things in my head for a very long time. And then all of a sudden I just like throw it out there, which has never been fun for any business partner I've ever had. Cause they're like, where did all this come from? So I, you know, it was definitely being conceptualized prior to COVID, but I think that part of that concept is, when is the time going to be right? Like, when is this culture of the dirt and the dust and the dirty garage, you know, like not everything's dirty, but like the garage gym and building your own pull-up bars and stuff like that. When is CrossFit going to be mature enough for there to be that nostalgia? Right? Because I don't think it was there 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I think people were still riding the kind of CrossFit wave up. And I think now there's still people that are going to join CrossFit gyms, and there's going to be new people, but now there's a CrossFitter, right? There's a person who's been doing it forever. They're always going to, you know, if you're a skier or a snowboarder, you haven't skied in 8 years, you still call yourself a skier or a snowboarder, you know, like that's kind of how it is. I had moshed in a punk rock show, and God, no, I'd die if I went and did that now, but I still like consider myself at heart like a punk rock guy, you know? And so, I think we needed to wait for that time, and it feels like now people could really use that.
Yeah, it's definitely seeing a revitalization of the garage gym. People had no choice really, but I think, and I've said this to Jimmy a couple times, like I think you're going to see, you know, back in the day with the journal where they would go to someone's, you know, someone who started an affiliate in their garage, and then, you know, finally got to a point where they outgrew their garage and had to go to a real facility or lease a place. And now I think you're seeing that, like you said, you doing Zoom classes, but you do a Zoom class and 5 people would be at one person's garage. So, and I think even that, you know, wasn't it at one point, wasn't it, "We are the underground"? Wasn't that one of like the ASRX slogans, or some banners hanging in the gym, I think at one point?
Yeah, it was like a big line we did, which was, that was kind of, that was our answer to like the Reeboks, you know, because it was I believe it was the first year that we weren't the big dogs at the CrossFit Games, where we were the only apparel company and had like the most choice spot, right? There was one year where our booth was overlooking the stadium, and you could watch the event while you were sitting at the booth. And by the time the bigger companies came in, you know, we kind of felt sort of like, well, you know, we're the OGs. We're the guys that, like, you know, the Volcom, what Volcom was, companies like that. And so the We Are the Underground was sort of that play on, you guys may be coming in here and you may have more money and be able to buy your way in, but you didn't come from like, you know, from the underground like we did.
Yeah. So is it going to be the throwback to like the graphic tees and stuff like that, or is it going to be more of like the technical apparel, or a combination of both?
It'll be a combination. Like I said, it'll be most likely just whatever we're like kind of feel like doing, what sounds fun. I reached out to Brian and Alex the other day, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to each come up with like a signature shirt and just make something cool? And you know, the shorts were always something I really liked, so we'll do those, but it's definitely going to take the personality of the old, you know, but then not shying away from something that we think is a good product. I don't think we'll ever try to delve into what we consider technical, but I actually don't think anything CrossFitters use is technical. A pair of shorts, just because you work out in them, doesn't make them technical. They're just a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
You know, technical to me is like, you know, like one of those space super tight running or cycling suits with the crazy helmet or something, you know, has like a fan in it or whatever.
Right, the skin suits.
Yeah. So if you're in the Olympics, I feel like that's a technical piece of apparel. If you're doing thrusters with the empty barbell. I don't think you need like, compression tights.
Well, I would always joke at people who would have the high socks, the lifting shoes, the knee sleeves, the wrist wraps, all this shit. And I would always joke and be like, back in my day, we just wore board shorts and Vans.
Yeah, that's it. Had a flat foot, and the shorts were like what was laying on your floor when you got out of bed. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's definitely that's who I am. I would say that when we kind of did the second iteration, the ASRX, we tried to go too polished. We tried to sort of follow instead of lead, thinking that the culture was going a certain direction that we had to like stay with to stay relevant, which probably in some ways is true if you want to be that kind of company. But all along, we were just this small core company that, I think that certain people are going to love and want to be a part of, and other people will have never heard of us, which is maybe where we always should have been.
Are you going to relaunch the number one seller in ASRX history?
You're talking about the Wad Killer?
No, I've got tiger blood.
Oh. Only if he does another interview with you guys.
I just remember that day where that interview came out, and it's like, yo, we need tiger blood t-shirts. And within like 20 minutes, there was a logo.
Dude, we
had going to press, and then there was a cease and desist, I think, because he used his likeness.
Yeah, we got a lot of cease and desist. My favorite was the Misfits. Because we had the one. It was the Misfit logo, but it had two S's, so it said Misfit. It was a women's shirt. And the Misfits sent us a cease and desist, which I think is like the total like opposite of punk rock thing to do. Like,
right.
Call my lawyer.
Tell Glenn Danzig to go fuck himself.
Yeah, I know.
Midget.
Fucking midget. The song "Mother" isn't even that good. It's like 3 chords and 4 lyrics.
You ever see the video of him getting punched out?
Yep. Yeah. It's so good. I love the Misfits though, but yeah.
So do I. Shout out to Jersey.
Hell yeah, that's right.
You mentioned some of the pitfalls, and you mentioned selling because you guys were in debt. Do you think a lot of those pitfalls and having to sell was just the bigger companies getting involved, or can you pinpoint a few mistakes that kind of led you to having to sell in the first place?
I don't know if "a few" is the right word to use, but
I was trying to be nice.
I think the only reason the bigger companies probably were affected us is because it affected who we thought we were. I think good brands stick around even if there's other competition, no matter how much money there is. There's plenty of smaller brands out there that have managed to keep steady for several years in different cultures, while Nike and these other companies have come in. I mean, look at skateboarding, for example. There's a ton of really great skateboard brands that have been around long before Nike ever got involved. Nike came in and then got back out for the most part. And so I think that those big companies probably affected us in us thinking we needed to be different than what we were. But I think most of it was internal. We were relatively young at the time. Money was coming in fast. We weren't apparel people. We didn't have anything to do with the apparel industry when we started at all. The closest any of us came to the apparel industry was I was a graphic designer and had occasionally designed a few t-shirts for some clients that I'd never even dealt with on the back end of the production side of things. So, and I'd owned a small 1-person business for maybe a year when we got started. Alex was a helicopter, soon to be helicopter pilot. And, I think he has a kinesiology degree. Brian was like being a political consultant in the like Upper East Coast or in DC, I think. And so we weren't like these guys that, were like Noble, who, from my understanding at least, all worked at Reebok, and then they broke off of Reebok and they they were like, oh, we have all these sources and everything. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. And so I think that was a big part. It's just lack of experience, a lot of things moving really fast. We were the first company to really kind of blow up when it came to CrossFit apparel. I would argue at this point, we really were the first true CrossFit brand. And at least that lasted. And so I think that we kind of lost my train of thought there. We couldn't have done a whole lot better than we did with considering the circumstances. And in hindsight, I think that probably the biggest thing was that we just didn't stay true to who we were. And so there's a lot of little things we did, like we didn't know how to do a P&L or something that that I know how to now, that I help other companies do. But overall, I think it was a cultural thing that really probably drove us to sell. It just wasn't fun anymore. It got to a point where, we'd come in, our employees were die hard. I mean, you guys know, they would have worked for free for us. We were there every day. And for some reason, I swear to God, it was always freezing cold. No matter where we worked, it was freezing cold or like sweltering hot. It was never comfortable. Spangle always had his hoodie up, even if it was 90 degrees in there. And we were just, it got to a point where it wasn't like the old days, like we talked about, where 4 of your friends show up at the garage and you just get after it. You talk shit to each other. You drink a beer afterwards, you hang out for 2 hours, or you're in this small gym and you and all your friends basically just run the place. That's what the culture was. And then it went from that to, we need to get a full line list out before this. And, we need to get investors to buy more product. We need to get more product. And I think that maybe one of the other big things, and that I've seen this happen a lot with other companies now that I've gotten a lot more seasoned in sort of the entrepreneur side, is when you start to blow up, you feel like everything you touch turns to gold, right? Like you've got the Midas touch. And so we were like, okay, we've done an apparel line, but let's do events, right? Let's do CrossFit events. Let's do technical apparel. Let's, start managing athletes. Let's let's do a shoe. There was one point where you're like getting a shoe designer. It's like $100,000 just to get started for a shoe, and so we started to really spread ourselves thin, in addition to kind of losing our focus on what we really loved. And I think that combination of things was probably what really did it.
And
I know that's a short answer for your question.
No, I appreciate it. 2020 has been pretty crazy. And even before that started, there was a whole lot of craziness that went down with CrossFit, with HQ, with Greg. And I know you've always been close with a lot of those people. And if you're comfortable talking about it, when all that stuff started going down and, people were jumping ship left and right, like where were you at when all that sort of stuff was going on, in terms of what you're doing with your brands and your businesses and stuff?
Yeah, it was a weird time. I'll tell you that. That was a strange time. I'm very good personal friends with Greg. And I'm very good personal friends with a lot of people that are not Greg, that are in the community. So on top of owning a gym and people in the gym having different opinions. So it was very, the best way to describe it is just a sad situation. Overall, it wasn't good. I don't think it was just well handled by the vast majority. I think that it was an ill-timed comment on Greg's part, which I'm sure you would agree with. And I think that it wasn't good for CrossFit in a whole, not just from like people thinking what Greg's perspective is on things, but just how our community reacted, which was supposed to be this united front, with a lot of just name calling and pointing fingers at each other, showed how fragile the community really was. So I think that it was tough for me from a personal perspective, because like I said, Greg's a super good friend of mine. I know that he's not a racist person at all, but like I would absolutely 100% guarantee he's not ever, at least around me, ever said anything like that would allude for me to think he was like that type of person. But you can't, it's hard to explain that to, member that just read an article in the New York Times and they want to know, why you're still going to be named CrossFit. And so I was going back and forth. One thing you guys probably aren't aware of is Brian. So myself, Brian, and JT are all the business owners for all the companies: ASRX, Dynamis CrossFit, Fully Amped. It's called the Keela Group.
Brian Spangle?
No.
Oh, okay.
His name's Brian Holly.
Okay.
He's a former he's a Berkeley grad. He's from Compton, and he owned Diamond Bar CrossFit for 7 years, I think. And so Brian is a very intelligent, graduated with honors. He's African American. He's very well ingrained in the CrossFit community. He's my business partner, and he wrote a very well thought out response to our community on why we're going to stay a CrossFit gym, and also his perspective on things. And even some of the people that read that didn't find that to be enough for the situation, which got to a point where you were just like, well, I feel like people might just be angry for being angry, and so it's sad. It feels more like a business and less like a movement with Greg gone. But with that said, Eric Rosa seems like a really good businessman, and he is a CrossFitter. And so if there
He's
was
in Denver, right?
Boulder, I think.
Boulder,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And he seems to be doing good for the community. He seems like a nice guy, and hopefully it can allow for some things to smooth over with the community that maybe didn't like the way Greg's approach was. It's just not probably ever going to be necessarily the same as it was, because I think you've got somebody now that their focus is the business and the CrossFit as a fitness system, versus a guy that CrossFit was just the tip of the iceberg on a crusade to crush the corruption in anything in health science. And so you have two completely different perspectives that both loved the same thing, but wanted to utilize it for different ways. And I think that you're going to see good and bad from both of those.
Did you have, you mentioned Brian had written up that letter for the community in your gym, and even with that, some were still not happy with that response. Did you have people that left the community because you stayed affiliated?
No, we didn't. No, we had one begrudged former member that was still part of our community page that said that they would never come back to the gym. But aside from that, we never lost anyone. And so, I think that there's been a lot of things that have happened this year that has taught us that at least Americans can get heated real easy. And as soon as you get heated, like logic and reason and having some sort of common ground just goes completely out the door. And thanks to Google, all you got to do is Google whatever you want to be right, and you'll find a study that proves it. And so I think that I've learned to just take everything with a grain of salt and try to understand people's perspectives on things. And if I don't agree with it, I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to say, well, it's okay, we disagree. That's kind of how I felt with the gym. And luckily everybody stayed, and then we actually even gained some members, obviously not because we stayed at CrossFit.
Right. Yeah. And with COVID and everything, has HQ been like reaching out and talking to gym owners about how to, run the gym safely or how to stay open, that sort of stuff?
They haven't really given any sort of advice, I wouldn't say, but they're definitely being way more interactive on calling. I've gotten a couple phone calls from them just asking how we're doing, what, where we're at with things, if we're thinking about closing, where our membership was. So it does seem like they're putting forth an effort to at least get an idea of where everyone's at, I think. But just like our earlier discussion, I don't think they know any better than we do about what we should or shouldn't do. Half of me says close down until this shit goes away, and then the other half is like, let's just stay completely open and just take our chances. And I think if you were to talk to everyone at HQ, you'd have the same opinions. from different people. So I think that they're going to put a little bit more information out there for us in the future. The newsletters seems more common. I think I don't know how often it is. I don't know if it's on any specific cadence, but I have noticed it a lot more. And they'll probably assist in sort of maybe some more like legal and political guidance in the future, I bet. Like what to do when, the best thing I can hope for is that we know what to do next time some shit like this happens, both from a country standpoint and from a gym standpoint.
And as far as everyone kind of being on either side or canceling, I knew that you were staying an affiliate because as long as I've known you, you've been that core CrossFit guy who's, lived by those core beliefs. And, obviously you don't want to see stuff go down like went down with Greg, but I mean, I wasn't surprised. Like if you follow CrossFit and you know who Greg Glassman is, he's always been a pretty outspoken person. That said, I think, if you look at the good side of things, I think it's a good reset to kind of get rid of some of the people that didn't want to be involved anymore, and to kind of, you're getting back to the roots. It's not all about the games anymore. It's about getting in the garage and throwing down with your boys.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right. I think there was a lot of people that already had their foot out the door long before Greg ever said anything. And I think it goes without saying, Greg was never not controversial. I mean, he's been on 60 Minutes saying that he hates the owner of Adidas or whatever, like he said, he's not, he doesn't hold anything in. And I think that what was probably the most surprising for me is how much his culture revolted against him. Like I can see the outside world saying like not liking CrossFit. In fact, a lot of people, I mean, Jillian Michaels or whatever her name is, just bashed CrossFit, I understand. It was a little shocking to me to see how many people revolted against Greg internally. Cause I come from the days where, Greg in the affiliate gatherings, 10 years ago, people would show up from all over and he'd speak and it was dead silent in the room. And people would like almost be in tears when they'd go up and talk to him because of how much CrossFit had changed their lives. And so I remember seeing those things, and even a few years ago, we were at the games. I had a guy, I was Greg's like pseudo security guard. So we had these two like real security guards. They're like former, like, I don't know what they are. They're not former, actually. They're like special forces or something. But I was there because I like was the guy that drove the golf cart, and Greg had stood in line and he waited, been there for a couple hours. You're only supposed to be there for an hour to meet and greet and like if people wanted autographs or whatever. And this guy was back in like near the end of the line. Everybody else had kind of left. We're like, sorry guys, no more. And this one guy just wasn't taking no for an answer. And he was ready to fight me because he was just so like, he needed to meet Greg Glassman, It was like, this is my chance. I drove here from this place. This is it. Like I'm meeting him, And of course, Greg said hi to him and they talked and he was super stoked about it. And so it was a little bit surprising in some ways to see how quickly so many people turned. But then, people are frustrated as CrossFit affiliate gym owners. I think that most of us don't make a lot of money as a gym owner. There are the outliers out there that have managed to break through. Most likely they quit their gyms and started doing some sort of CrossFit gym business consulting gig to make even more money. But they, most of us, it's a month to month, paycheck to paycheck type scenario, especially if you're solely a CrossFit gym owner. And I think that, some of us started in our 30s, even 20s, and people are getting in their 30s and 40s and realizing like making a couple $1,000s a month is really hard. And I think that when that happens, you start to want to have somebody to point the finger at on why you're not successful. And, you can't, I personally couldn't blame CrossFit for any of my lack of success. I do take it on myself. With that said, they do have a lot of resources that could be used probably to help me if they wanted to. It's not necessarily just handing me money, but making it to where more people might be able to go to the gym or having certain perspective or perception of what CrossFit is be a little different. So people aren't scared of it. And so I think because of that, people got really frustrated and they just felt like nothing was being done. A lot of it's like with our government, with just people were just, wow, everything sucks. Nothing's getting done. There's got to be someone to point the finger at. And as soon as that happens, or as soon as people get heated once again, it's not logic and reason. It's emotion, and it's just like, boom, canceled. Yeah, I personally despise the cancel culture, especially like Louis C.K. Man. I love Louis C.K.
He asked.
Yes, I mean, we don't need to get into that discussion. A
I'm
little
kidding.
weird, but I think that sometimes the penalty doesn't fit the crime with the cancel culture, and I'm not speaking specifically about Greg or Louis C.K. But it does seem like it's very much like there's nothing in between, not being canceled and canceled. If you're canceled, you're canceled, right? That's not a slap on the wrist like you're welcome back. It's pretty much like you're done for. And the sad part about that with somebody like Greg would be that what could he have continued to do to help corruption and health science and things like that that I have no idea if he's still going to attempt to do or not. So I do think there's some detriment to a knee-jerk reaction and just making somebody the devil for doing one thing.
Yeah. And it seems like such a bummer because of the timing, because before that, leading up to that, there was definitely within the last year, maybe 2 years, he had said, we're switching, we're coming away from the games and we're going back to our roots and we're going back to health and community and, getting people off of medicine, getting people healthy. And it was like really that transition where there was, I'm sure people wanted to cancel him because he said he didn't want to have anything to do with the games anymore. You know what I mean? How many people were butthurt about that? But for me, and I'm sure for you and Jimmy, like we got into it back in the day because we were, like we've said, working out with our friends in a gym, wearing Vans, wearing board shorts, talking shit, drinking a couple beers, maybe doing a couple shots of fish oil every minute on the minute type shit. You know what I mean?
Well, you won't. That's one thing you won't be seeing with ASRX.
The smell of fish oil just wafting through the gym for like the whole day. But yeah, it's such bad timing because I was getting so back into like what he was doing, what he was saying, and it even ties into this stuff. It's like I've been watching all different news outlets for the last 10 months, and I still haven't seen anyone say, like, you should be taking vitamin C, you should be taking zinc, you need to be in the sun, take your shoes off, rub your toes in the grass, like, sun your butthole, whatever it may be. Like, no one's talking about this stuff. So it was a bummer that, he was doing the things that I like to see, talking about the things that he, was talking about, and to have this unfortunate situation happen. But like Jimmy had said, like some people were just looking for that out. They already had their opinions of Greg, whether it's because he didn't want to be involved with the CrossFit Games or some of the other things he's done throughout the years. But yeah, it's just a bummer. But with these sorts of things, hopefully good things come from them. I think it sounds like the new gentleman is doing some good things, and all the gyms that I follow that I've ever been a part of seem like they're still thriving and doing well. The question I wanted to get, I forgot about it, I just remembered. You mentioned that, guys, gals that, they get into it in their 20s or late 20s, and now they're in their late 30s or 40s, and they're starting to realize like, yeah, I'm only bringing in a couple $1,000s a month. Can you pinpoint, is it an oversaturation thing? Is it the membership fee? Like, is it just people's lack of, not having the business experience to get into a business? What is it that's holding some of those people back?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I know the answer, I'll tell you, because then but I think one of the things I've thought about more lately is the amount of population that actually has the mentality to enjoy CrossFit. right? And so CrossFit is for everyone when it comes to their physical, like, whatever shape they're in, right? You can take somebody that's 300 pounds overweight and you can teach them to do CrossFit all the way up to the most elite athletes in the CrossFit games. That I truly believe it's universal. But from a work ethic and mentality standpoint, is definitely not universal. And I'd say there's a vast majority, or not vast majority, but there's a lot of people, vast amount of people that just don't have what they need to want to go into a CrossFit gym and do what you need to do to get fit doing CrossFit. Um, and so I think that the amount of potential customers out there isn't quite as high as maybe we all assumed initially, because it's just not as big as something a little more palatable, like a Orange Theory or F45 or whatever. They should have Billy D. Williams do the Colt 45 like thing. I don't think, is he even alive?
I think so.
I don't know if he's still alive. Anyways, and I think that kind of what we were talking about with ASRX is sort of happening in CrossFit. A lot of gyms, including ours, have tried to make it more palatable, like these body weight kind of, hey, come in and just do this burn class where you just do body weight stuff, and then you'll work your way up to the barbell, and people sweat, and it's 30 minutes, and it's kind of like a spin class, with these hopes of sort of like farming them up into regular CrossFit, which does work sometimes. But the reality is the easiest, most low hanging fruit are people that have the CrossFit mentality that just happen to find CrossFit. And so I think that oversaturation maybe, but they're all kind of they all have like the same amount, right? We're all in that 100, 200 range. I mean, there are 400, 500,000 member gyms out there, but they're not all like that. I'd say most of the ones in our area are probably in 1 to 200 range. If you took that total population of people for all the gyms in Carlsbad, you're only talking about like 1,000 people, right? Well, Carlsbad's got a lot more than 1,000 people. It's just that a lot of more of those people don't actually just want to do CrossFit. They've tried it and they just didn't like it. They weren't into it. I feel like the exposure's there. I think most people are aware of the fact CrossFit exists. They know kind of what it is. Some, maybe a lot, have a bad impression of what they think it is and haven't tried it, or have gone to a gym that wasn't so good. But I think that might be one of the bigger things, is it's not as popular as we expected it to be. And really, it's almost like we've forced it to try to be mainstream when it never really wanted to be, from a cultural perspective, it never really wanted to be. From how we act in the gym, it's not corporate at all, which is generally going to be mainstream. You don't usually have any big, massive corporations. Like, you don't go to Starbucks and somebody's just dropping F-bombs and wearing a cutoff when you're getting your latte. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a different culture. And I don't know if, and there's people that like that. They like the going buying $200 Lululemons and go to a, $30 yoga class. And maybe those types of people aren't the same kind of people that want to work out at a CrossFit gym. So there is a lack of experience. The barrier of entry is very low to start a CrossFit. So I'm sure there's people that just didn't, kind of like with us with ASRX in the beginning, they don't know what they're doing when they're starting a business. And it's a very competitive market. There's a lot of gyms out there besides CrossFit, and to the general person, they don't know one from the other. Really, it's about, whatever's cheapest a lot of times, because they don't know. But I also just don't think it's as inclusive as we expected. One of the other things too is I think it's really expensive. I know that people hate to hear that, but I feel like the $150 a month was not really vetted out by anybody. It just sort of happened, like somewhere between $130 to $200 a month is kind of like the standard price for CrossFit. And I think CrossFit, its value is worth that for sure, and more, but its market is much, much lower. So it's created this sort of hybrid between, group classes, which you can go to the YMCA and do for free with your YMCA membership, and personal training. But it's really hard to convince people that it's kind of like personal training and all the skills they're going to learn And so when they see $150 a month at face value to, Equinox, or sorry, not Equinox, they're actually probably more expensive, but like 24-hour fitness, they can't decipher the difference. And so they're just going to like, well, and then now 24-hour fitness has a bunch of CrossFit equipment. They're like, oh, I'll just go there. It's like way cheaper. So even though the value's worth it, it's a really hard sell. It's not an easy sell. And you think about, hey, welcome to what looks like an empty warehouse. I'm going to put you through something that's going to make you want to puke. You're going to want to, trust me, you're going to want to do it again after the 4 days to 5 days that you're no longer sore. And then I want you to pay me 5 times what the gym down the street is charging, right? So I think that the model in itself could just be hard to do anything other than a small community-based system, which is fine because that's what's great about it,
Is it possible to run a facility and have that, 24-hour fitness type membership, or is that just not possible?
I don't think the value'd be there. I think you would, you'd burn your coaches out. You'd burn members, wouldn't get the value. I mean, anything's possible. And probably if someone's going to do it, it's going to be someone like a 24-hour fitness, but they've tried and it hasn't really been successful for them. So the secret sauce isn't just the methodology, even though that's a huge part of it. It's also the culture and the community, right?
Sure.
It's like, do a bunch of skate kids want to go to, the high school gymnasium where they've got like, all the jocks are hanging out in the new skate park they built in there? Or do they want to go to like the one that's out in the middle of nowhere that they can go hang out and, smoke ditchweed and party, And so it's just it's a different culture. And I don't think that it combines very well. It doesn't even really combine with even weird stuff that you think it would, like MMA and what are the obstacle course races? Like those are different people. It's weird. Like you'd think that they would all kind of culminate in this sort of aggressive, intense thing, but CrossFitters rarely do like any of the other stuff, and MMA and OCR guys never do CrossFit. Like you see them occasionally, but they're like, it's like different sports, like skiing and snowboarding. You do one or the other,
Right. And to me, that's kind of the interesting thing with it, because I think that was what drew Jimmy and I to CrossFit, was like, hey, you're going to do this and you're going to be better at what you love to do. And so that was always a draw. And then when we got into it and started going to a affiliate back in Jersey, the coach that we were most drawn to was the one that ran the CrossFit class. Like we were at wrestling practice. I mean, we were getting up at 4:00 in the morning and driving an hour and a half to go to a gym, because that was the creme de la creme in New Jersey back in the day. And we were loving it. And people were like, wait, you drove from where to come here to work out at 6:15? And we're just like, like licking our chops, like,
that's the same type of person that would ask, why would you wake up at 4:30 to go to wrestling practice? Right. And those are the same people that never signed up to be wrestlers. Right. So I think that that mentality has to be is relatively specific.
Yeah. And we had talked to Arm and Hammer a while back, and he had said the same thing, because he's into jujitsu now. And he says that there's not a lot of crossover. Like there's not a lot of jujitsu guys that do CrossFit. He would say when he was out traveling for events or doing things, every once in a while he might meet up with someone to roll. But he said for the most part, like there's not a lot of crossover with. And I think that's where that separation happened in like 2011 when they moved the games to Carson, where it was like, I just want to be good at exercising. Where before that, it was like a lot of people were like, hey, I'm a skier, this is going to protect my knees, or I'm a runner, I'm a wrestler, and then you also had like CrossFit Endurance, and you had all these little offshoots where it kind of encouraged that. Then the games blew up, and then it was just like, I just want to exercise all day long and get better at exercising.
Yeah, that cultural change, I think, kind of went in line, like the games kind of went in line with a lot of people's kind of thought process with CrossFit, which is, maybe probably why the games became so big. But I was one of those people, when I first got into it in Oahu, it was just about hanging out, doing something I'd never done before. I loved the intensity of it. And then we were a bunch of just young dudes walking around with our shirts off in Hawaii, shredded, and it was like just felt good. Everything about it was awesome. And then, I did the regionals in 2009, and I was like super into it. After that, I was like, I gotta like be a CrossFit Games athlete. Well, if I would have known now, I'd be like, yeah, right, bro. It's like I'm gonna go fight Conor McGregor too.
I traveled all the way to California before I realized that.
Yeah. So I was like, that kind of like all I want to do is train, and you still see that, and it's sometimes kind of hard to see when you see somebody really new that really gets into it, and they're in their head they just want to be so good, and you're like, man, you just don't have the skills and the talent for that. You're never going to be one of those people. But in their head, they're like, it's so new, I want to do it, and they think they can do it. And you of course got to kind of encourage them to do whatever their goals are. But kind of we rode that wave of, man, I want to be a CrossFit athlete. And I stopped. I didn't care about surfing or skiing or snowboarding or all the other things that I was always into. Like, even honestly, I was way more into martial arts stuff than I was CrossFit, for most of my life before I got into CrossFit. And so that happens, and it happens to a lot of people. It happened to us kind of while the game sort of grew. And then I think that what has happened now is we went from like full circle. I don't max out on most of the stuff I do. I try to maintain a good shape so I can go do all the fun stuff I like to do. I do way more outdoor activities than I, focus on my training. I haven't followed like a program, where I'm like, oh man, I'm going to work out 3 hours a day. I haven't done that in 10 years, and I have no desire to. I like to go in, I like to get sweaty, see everybody, hang out for a minute. If I got a coach, and then go home and do fun stuff, And I think it's a way more sustainable lifestyle than wanting to be a CrossFitter, because there's one significant difference between CrossFit, and I will argue this to the death, and every other sport that I've ever done, is that doing CrossFit is not fun. It's not. It's not fun. Nobody in the middle of a CrossFit workout's like, dude, this is sick. No one's like hooting and hollering like they're surfing when they catch a good wave, and they're like, like it's not fun, right? It sucks. Like you embrace the fact that it sucks. Feels good afterwards. You get a big charge before because of all the adrenaline and excitement, right? And nervousness. But actually doing the sport of CrossFit is not fun. When I went against you with that deadlift workout and the running, I would rather have had somebody punch me in the face than finish that. That's not fun, right? I've never been snowboarding and been like, man, I would rather take a kick in the nuts than this, And so the fact that it's not fun makes it fairly unsustainable as like a hobby, right? It needs to be looked at as a accessory to your life, not your life, at least from my perspective. And it will happen to everyone eventually.
Yeah. Unlike you guys, I kind of realized my first CrossFit workout when me and Richie were doing Fran at our level 1, and I was staring at the pull-up bar and I couldn't do pull-ups, that CrossFit probably wasn't ever going to be my thing. But the thing that always brought me to it
rhythm.
was the GPP, the general physical preparedness. I remember when I first started doing CrossFit and it would snow and I was living in New Jersey, just getting stoked to go shovel snow because I did CrossFit and I was going to kill shoveling snow, or someone needing, holes dug in their backyard and taking it as a workout. That was always the draw for me. Like, I can do this. I can beat the crap out of myself. And if I have to help someone in a burning building, it's going to prepare me for that. So that's what I think CrossFit got away from and forgot about, and I think was the biggest, the most powerful thing when it came to CrossFit.
Yeah, and I think that was probably a big. I wouldn't say that HQ had as much to do with that as just how many more people that were outside of the standard original culture got into it. I think that anything gets diluted once the masses sort of take it over. And I think we went from a pretty like-minded culture in the early, like mid 2000s, to completely varied at this point, where you've got your covered in tattoos, just, total anti-establishment guy. You've got your, mom, and then you've got your super straight-laced, former football player jock, all working out. And it's always it's always been that way to a certain point, but the mentalities were very similar still back then. And I think that those have sort of just kind of gone all across the board. And when that happens, the masses seem to have kind of the majority that came about started to really focus more on that sort of athletic performance side of things and wanting to be CrossFitters. I mean, most people you talk to now have no idea what the past was like with CrossFit. They think CrossFit games, CrossFit gyms, that's it. A workout in a park, that's ridiculous. Why would you do that? There's no equipment. They would never even think to do that, or in your garage, unless you buy like 10 grand of stuff from Rogue, and back in the day, that was all there was. And and then you'd get these little tidbits of information. I mean, you guys especially know this, back in, 15 years ago, 13 years ago, you'd get some sort of Russian training manual or something, or like probably Pose Running when it first came out. You're like, what is this? This is like the holy grail that nobody knows about. And you and like all their other nerd CrossFit friends are who can read it the fastest and regurgitate the same, the bullshit while you're eating wings, and that was kind of that what we were super into. We were kind of like the outcasts of the CrossFit nerds, but that's not what it is anymore. I mean, it changed significantly. And I don't know if it's necessarily a negative, but it does make people like us miss the old days quite a bit, I think.
Yeah. I think 2020 in general is making us miss the old days
Yeah.
a hell of a lot.
Yeah. It's funny. I've never wanted to go to a concert so bad until I couldn't go to one. Before it's like, I'll go next year. Now I'm like, I'll go see freaking Dave Matthews Band. I don't care. As long as it's just like outdoors and I can, I can just smell people smoking weed. It's fine.
You remember when we went downtown to thinking we were going to get tickets for Pennywise the day of, and we showed up and they're like, oh yeah, we're sold out.
I can't believe I don't remember that, which I'm also not surprised at all because we probably still got hammered after that. But I am surprised we thought we could get Pennywise tickets the day of.
Yeah, we just showed up and we were like, oh yeah, we didn't even think to get them online.
Yeah. Remember you could get a Pennywise ticket for $5,
right?
And a hot dog for a nickel. I'm just kidding.
That's the other thing. I find myself on Instagram. I'm looking at a lot of these like reels now are pretty popular, and you see all the DJ reels, and I'm just like, man, are we ever going to be able to get weird again? Like what?
Well, and even if COVID ends, you still got cameras, man. Cameras scare me. If they had cameras when I was like 22, I would have been so many memes. I mean, I would have been so many. Like, I can't even make fun of people because I'm like, yeah, I kind of did that, Like, thank God nobody was, no one was just holding a fucking camcorder.
Oh, God. 20s at the Jersey Shore. Thank God iPhones didn't exist. There'd be like,
yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for kids. I feel like that's kind of I mean, nothing where they do shit to other people, but like when you're just acting like a stupid ass in your 20s, that's like part of being that age, and to do something that dumb, which every kid in their 20s does stupid shit. And if they don't, they just end up being weird in their 30s. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
People that don't like get after it. Like they just it's almost like that cancel culture again, except out of mockery instead of like hate.
Right.
Like you're that, like that one girl remember that picture of her moshing? It's just like the rest of her life, dude. She's known for that, She's having a good time at some local like VFW punk rock concert, and some asshole took a picture.
People don't forget.
Superimposed her fighting Mike Tyson and shit. But don't get me wrong, I still laugh about it.
Yeah, the internet is undefeated for sure.
I am truly addicted to my phone. Like, and it's not like I'm addicted to just like everything on my phone. I'm addicted to memes. I can't get enough, man. I send probably 20 memes a day to people. I'm just like, you guys are fucked now. I'm probably gonna start sending them to you.
I have a cache saved in my phone for like just responses to text messages. Where someone said something, I have like the perfect meme for each occasion of like, like I have the one of Leo DiCaprio on the boat in Wolf of Wall Street where he like holds a martini glass.
It's going to be like Idiocracy, man. At some point, we're just going to talk in pictures and memes. You're not even going to have language. It'll just be, you just send some sort of Seinfeld meme and people totally get where to be, what time.
Totally. But then you could get super deep and put on your tinfoil hat and you think like, well, maybe that's what hieroglyphs were.
That's true. Full circle, man. Go back. Strips of venison on the freeway. Oh man.
So last time we talked, you were pretty much doing all the coaching duties at Dynamis. Has that changed at all? Are you still the guy doing all the coaching, or you got some people in there helping you now?
We have gotten some people. It's been fantastic. We've had a handful of new coaches and a few members that have stepped up as managers that have been, I mean, the gym's never done better. And like I said, we had our third best month in November that we had all year, which isn't saying much because most of the year's been COVID. But even still, November for a fitness facility while COVID's still going on, that's pretty good. And that's almost all attributed to these new coaches and these new managers that have taken a lot off my plate. So it's been fantastic. And it took a long time to kind of get to the right point where that would work. But now that we have, I barely coach, which has been awesome. Like twice a week now, most of the time.
Do you still do the programming?
I don't actually. I don't even have to do that now. So I don't know if I had already started working with these guys before when I talked to you, but we got a partnership with Mayhem Nation with Rich Froning. And so I handle with their team, we collectively handle all the website, the product. So if you go to mayhemnation.com, literally everything you see is me and my team combined with those guys. And one of the things that they do is an affiliate programming thing. And I help out that side of things too a little bit. And so they offered to give me a free subscription to it. So I asked the gym members if they'd want to do the Mayhem stuff. And of course they were like, hell yeah. And so we use about 90% of their stuff. Well, actually we use all of their stuff, but then I also fill in a secondary workout that's a little less intense usually, as sort of either active recovery or if people are just like, man, that's just too gnarly. And so I do a little bit of programming and I still input it, but it's significantly less work, which is nice. And of course, like those guys are going to have pretty good programming. So it's been fun. It's been fun too, because I do it and it's not like, I'm already gaming in my head when I'm making it. So I'm like, oh, that's going to suck. I'm going to miss that day. But when somebody else makes it, you're like, oh, fuck, that doesn't seem so bad. And you're like halfway in and you're like, it's way worse than I thought. So it's been better for my fitness too.
You are the ultimate gamer. I've never seen anyone game workouts more calculated than you.
But it is smarter, not harder, man. That's yeah, it's I've stopped doing that to a certain extent just because I realized that I'm not trying to beat anybody and I'm actually trying to get fit. So all I'm doing is like cheating myself by gaming a workout. Like I might get it done faster, but like I get less fit. So I'm like, what the hell was the point of that? Maybe if me and Alex and Brian work out together again, I'll try to game it, try to beat him. We'll see.
Is Alex still over at Counterculture?
Yeah, he is. Him and I, we send memes to each other a fair amount, and then we occasionally talk. And I get my car fixed over there still, so occasionally I'll run into him. He's still coaching there and still an owner there, but his main gig is a helicopter instructor. So
sweet.
Yeah, so he's doing that, which is funny because my gym is right by the airport, so it's likely he's flying over all the time, which is pretty cool.
Spraying you with chemtrails.
I know, right?
Is Brian still in Detroit?
Last I heard, he actually moved to LA.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I texted him, but I haven't heard back from him. But I get weird, like, occasional texts from him probably every couple of months too. So we'll like shoot the shit for a minute and then we kind of like don't talk for a couple of months. And then that kind of reoccurring thing.
Right on. Prince, you got anything else?
Nah, let's get into rapid fire, Richie Rich. I'll start off. Do you have a daily practice or daily ritual?
I mean, no, not really, to be honest. It's pretty loose. I mean, I always drink coffee in the morning.
That's the next question.
Yeah, but that's that. And I get on my computer, and yeah, I did get into the stock market a little bit. So I check my stocks every morning, but that's about it.
You do Bitcoin?
Not Bitcoin. I have like a little bit of Bitcoin, but not much. I missed the wave.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned you're a coffee drinker. Are you brewing at home or are you still going Starbucks?
I'm a total slut when it comes to coffee. I'll just do anything. It doesn't matter. It could be the only thing I don't like is dairy because that just like kills my stomach. If it's hot coffee, I'll drink next day old coffee. You know, it doesn't matter. If I'm feeling motivated, a lot of it has to do with if my wife takes the dog out already to take a shit, then I'll probably just stay at home and drink pot coffee. But if she doesn't take the dog out to take a shit, I have to go outside anyway. So I'll just drive to Starbucks, let him go take a shit, and then get my coffee. So that's how I determine it.
Still an iced coffee guy?
Both, mostly iced though. Yeah. But I've warmed up to the hot coffee quite a bit. It hits different. There's something about the Starbucks regular coffee that's like, dude, I could jump through the ceiling when I drink that shit. I don't know what it is, but I don't sleep very well when I drink the hot coffee though. So I try to stay to the cold.
It's probably a lighter roast.
Must be.
Lighter roasts have more caffeine.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What are you listening to podcast wise, music wise, audiobooks? You reading anything?
And you guys are gonna laugh at this one. Well, music wise, the Run the Jewels was probably like the last biggest thing I've just like couldn't stop listening to. The new Deftones pretty good too.
Yeah, it is.
But my evenings I watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune every night, and then every morning. This is part of my routine. If I stay home, I watch the Today Show and then watch the news all day. So literally, I'll have the news playing, and I switch from every network. So I don't have even like a specific news I watch. I just put on any news, unless Bar Rescue's on, and then I'll just watch Bar Rescue, like in the background.
Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory?
No, not really. I think there's already enough of them. You know, like my thought on conspiracy theories is that they're fun, but oftentimes there's not a lot of real science. So, you know, I like to lean towards the scientific side of things with peer review, with you know, published works when it comes to anything I really want to wholeheartedly believe. Everything else is kind of just almost like science fiction to me. Like I kind of want to believe some of this stuff, but I don't really delve into it all that much just because I don't know. It's just not something I'm all overly into. I like hearing about it if I hear about it. All my best friends are like huge Rogan fans. My literally like the best man in my wedding, he's always like, dude, you gotta listen to this senator. He's got an eye patch and he tells all the truths. And like, I don't even know who the guy is. I'm sure you probably got
Dan Crenshaw.
And I'm like, that's cool, man. But I mean, he's not going to be president. And so I don't know what you want me to do. And so, yeah, I don't really have a favorite. I'd like for there to be aliens. I think that'd be cool. So I guess
Do you lean more towards yes or more towards no?
As far as there being aliens, I'd say, you know, based on, you know, the works of Carl Sagan, there's just no chance there isn't aliens, you know, from like a statistical standpoint, whether they've made it to Earth. Here's my thing with that kind of conspiracy theory thought process is I don't think that people aren't malicious enough to want to do weird shit like that, but I don't think they're organized and smart enough to do it. So I think that, you know, when we think about the big government with these big, you know, massive conspiracies, like we can't even get the DMV right? Like there's no way that those same people have something they've kept secret for that long that somebody hasn't just been like, dude, there's a fucking alien back here. Come check this shit out. And the other guy's got his iPhone and he takes a picture of the alien and it's everywhere on, you know, like Send It's fucking Instagram. So my thought process is that it's unlikely that a lot of the things are true, just because I don't think humans are organized or secretive enough to be able to keep those types of secrets. And so probably my guess with aliens is we would already know if they were really here. But like I said, I'd love to find out that they were. I think that'd be. I mean, I don't think anything would surprise me at this point.
We've got lots of Navy friends. Have you heard any stories?
About aliens?
Yeah. I mean,
Nah,
was that
I've heard a lot of stories. about aliens. No, no one's told me anything about aliens. I wish. I'd see. I would be the guy right now. If I knew about aliens, I'd be telling you guys. I'd be telling everybody, dude. If I knew about aliens, I do have a fun story though. I could tell you that I thought there were aliens. If you guys want me to tell it to you, it's
Go.
relatively short. So I went up to Mammoth 3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago, and one of our buddies that was with us is like, "Hey, we got to go to this natural hot spring." And I was like, "All right, that's cool." So we go to this natural hot spring. There's like 5 of us. And I'd never been to a natural hot spring that was actually like a natural hot spring, where it looks like a hot tub in the middle of the desert, you know? I've been to the ones where you pay $5 and it's like a swimming pool or hot tubs.
Yeah.
This shit was like man-made. It was all mossy inside. It was like a natural hot spring out in the middle of the desert, up in the like high desert in Mammoth. And sun setting, it's like all steamy everywhere, super cool. And you know, we get done, some other people are coming in, we're getting ready to head out. And me and my wife are heading out first. And we look up in the sky and she's like, "What in the hell is that?" And there's so many stars out. And there's this line of what looks like stars, way too much like stars to be airplanes. And there's like 300 of them in a perfectly straight line, and they're appearing out of nowhere and disappearing out of nowhere. And I like to think of myself as a very like factual, you know, a practical person when it comes to anything like that. I'm not going to be the first guy to be like, "Holy shit, we're seeing aliens." But I was like, "Holy shit, I don't know what else this could possibly be. This has got to be aliens. What the fuck else could this be?" And there's people walking to the hot spring, and my friends and stuff are walking back, and everyone's trying to video it, and no one knows what the hell it is. And it turned out to be which you guys maybe know about, but it's called Space Link, I think. The Elon Musk satellites. Yeah. So we just happened to be out in the middle of the desert where you could see the stars during the right time when it happened to be going over us, where it was in that low enough where you could actually see it for like a certain period of time. And I swear at that time I was a believer in aliens, because I was like, dude, why don't I have some psychedelics right now? Because this is pretty awesome.
Well, I have a story real quick. We were, it was in Colorado, 2014. It's like 2:30 in the morning. We were running, and off in the horizon, we were on the Colorado Trail. Like an orb just lit up and stayed in the sky for a couple seconds, and then it just shot like straight up into the sky and disappeared. And we had been out there. We were doing a 30-mile run, and we were probably had like 5 miles to go, so we were tired. It was late, and my buddy goes, "Did you just see that?" And I go, "Yup." And that was it. We went back to not talking, but it was just like the craziest thing, where it was just like the smallest little thing that lit up out of nowhere, hovered in the sky for a second, and then it just was like gone, disappeared.
Did you ever find out what it was?
No.
That's crazy.
I'm that guy that's like, that was aliens.
That stuff's fun though. Like, it's, you know, like I like the idea that I would love it. If there were ghosts, I'd love if there were ghosts, you know, especially like every ghost story that nobody ever gets killed. Just scares the shit out of you. That'd be awesome. You know, it's like what I do to my wife when she comes home. I hide behind the door.
Yeah, that was a big one in the Airey household. The old man was notorious for scaring the shit out of you at any given time.
That builds character, I feel like.
Yeah, there was one Halloween. I was in elementary school, and the old man had a werewolf mask, and he came home from work, and he was like doing stuff in his truck, getting his stuff, and I was just excited to see him. I ran out to go like say hi to him, and I ran out, And as soon as I got to the truck, he came out of the truck and he was like, "Roar!" And then that night, my mom was taking a bath, and she thought like one of the dogs was like coming into the bathroom because it like the door opened, but she couldn't see anything, and like the door opened slowly. He came in on his hands and knees. She woke me up. She was screaming bloody murder. There was water all over the bathtub.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, no, he's a crazy son of a bitch.
That's fun. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Marcus,
for
you're
your
the
time.
man.
Appreciate
Appreciate
you.
your time. It's great talking with you. Good seeing you. Keep fighting the power.
Yeah, you too.
All right, dog. Later.